Now let's take a closer look at the ship as it was represented within the show. While Voyager is much smaller than the Enterprise D, lengthwise, it's actually longer than the Captain Kirk Enterprise. Given that Voyager doesn't have a neck, it also appears to have more interior space than the Constitution-class Enterprise. So being stranded in the Delta Quadrant doesn't seem like that big a deal. I mean, the ship looked pristine by the time it got back to Earth, so it handled the journey pretty well. From front to back, Voyager is 344 meters. Unless you count the time that Q turned it into a Christmas tree ornament, then it was more like 3 inches maybe? I don't know. Doesn't matter. Another unique function of the ship was its ability to land on surfaces.
We could land the ship.
Are you sure that's necessary?
It's like the Enterprise D's saucer separation capability. It's a neat gimmick to use every now and then, but ultimately it wasn't used that often. Additionally, the ship was launched from McKinley Station in 2371. Its optimal crew complement is around 150. It's an Intrepid-class ship. That's the first class to utilize bioneural gel packs. Mark Twain would have liked Weird Al. Its primary hull has a secondary deflector dish. Its hull is a duranium-based structure, and systems are powered by a plasma distribution model.
Exports killed Kennedy.
It has a mass of 700 metric tons and 257 rooms spread across 15 decks. It has both forward and aft-facing torpedo launchers with 13 phaser arrays. It can sustain a maximum warp of 9.975. But assisted turbo... Okay, full stop. Too much technobabble killed Star Trek Voyager. Moving to the interior, Voyager is drastically different than the Enterprise D, which was Voyager's most immediate predecessor. The bridge was constructed on the same soundstage as the Enterprise D's bridge. Whereas the Enterprise D used warmer tones, with a touch of natural material like this large wooden arch, Voyager is more monochromatic, with mostly machined metal touches. There's a lot of gray going on in this Intrepid class, kinda like a Dodge Intrepid. Some may like this approach, others may not.
Your ceiling is hideous.
But this was evidently the visual direction that Star Trek producers wanted to take the franchise because the Enterprise E bridge shares the same darker, more machined aesthetic. When the bridge takes damage, it also follows the Star Trek tradition of having rocks show up. Even the rock showed up. Voyager's bridge layout changed things up just a little bit. On most Federation ships, the ops and con stations are side by side in front of the captain's chair. On Voyager, only the con station is there. The ops station is located off to the side behind the command chairs. Speaking of the command chairs, they're pimped out with this fold-out console, whereas the Enterprise D had this tiny cluster of buttons on the armrest. Main engineering shares the same basic layout as most Federation ships, but Voyager's engineering set was noticeably larger than the Enterprise D's. It has a second level along the main corridor. The warp core itself was ejected on several occasions.
Computer, eject the core.
And aside from a deleted scene where the Enterprise E ejects its warp core in Insurrection, Voyager was the first ship where we see it happen on screen. Elsewhere on the ship, little self-referential touches were added, like reusing the transporter ceiling from the Enterprise D, or the tiny text on the bulkhead panels, containing little in-jokes like this one from Gilligan's Island.
Here at tale of a fateful trip that started from this tropic port aboard this tiny ship.
Voyager also had a holodeck, probably to give the writers a chance to have some holodeck-centered episodes when they ran out of ideas. The holodeck started off as this mind-blowing tech when it was first introduced on the Next Gen, but I guess all ships have them now, kind of like iPhones. It started off pretty exclusive, but 7 years later, even your grandma has one. Even though Voyager's holodeck looks different than the Enterprise D's, Voyager reuses the same doors, just with a fresh coat of gray paint. Other interior sets made appearances elsewhere, like sickbay being reused in First Contact and Insurrection. And while this set wasn't on the ship, this corridor used for alien planets was a redress of this Enterprise A corridor from Star Trek V. Voyager's interior design didn't end with the show. Over a decade later, Mike Okuda created an updated ship schematic. that allotted space for the Delta Flyer, which was a shuttlecraft that was originally too large for Voyager's shuttle bay. This updated schematic was for Star Trek Online, a computer game for Star Trek fans who love to grind. Fun stuff happens over Voyager's time stranded in the Delta Quadrant, like that time Janeway made Chakotay her first officer because she didn't want the Maquis killing her in her sleep, or that time Chakotay dresses up like Freddy Krueger, or that time Tuvok, Torres, and Janeway were assimilated by the Borg, or that time Chakotay dresses up like Freddy Krueger. Good times. Ratings weren't good though. In fact, after the first season, the ratings never came close to the numbers that The Next Generation received over any of its 7 seasons. So why not cram in some guest roles of characters from previous Star Treks? Commander Riker was teleported aboard by Q as a character witness in a trial against another Q, but his memory was erased. Captain Sulu in a flashback to Tuvok's time aboard the USS Excelsior. Counselor Troi aiding in Starfleet's search for Voyager. Lieutenant Barclay seeking to make communications contact with Voyager. Captain LaForge in an alternate future where he's captain of the USS Challenger. And a Galaxy-class starship, because why not? But in all seriousness, Voyager's writing never came together like it did on The Next Gen or DS9. So while the crew, their circumstance, and Voyager itself had so much potential, it never really lived up to that potential. This was the little ship that could, that was stuck on a show that ultimately just couldn't. Maybe if Ronald D. Moore got control of Voyager, things would have turned out differently. For those who don't know, but he did get his hands on an Intrepid-class ship, the USS Bellerophon.
The Bellerophon leaves in 3 hours.
Which appeared on DS9. It was named by Moore after an unseen ship in Forbidden Planet. Let's just speculate it looks like this, which was named after the HMS Bellerophon of the English Royal Navy, which was named after Bellerophon from Greek mythology, who was one of the few characters to tame Pegasus, which is what Moore named Riker's previous ship, the USS Pegasus, that was lost during a covert mission using a Federation-developed cloaking device. Moore would later use this name on the Battlestar Pegasus when he produced Battlestar Galactica. Now I'm spinning out, I don't... Oh yeah, the USS Bellerophon on DS9. It's basically the same as Voyager. The bridge and conference rooms were identical to those on Voyager. Except for the dining hall. It's basically the same as Voyager's, except in its first appearance on Voyager, there were replicators along this wall. It's soon replaced by Neelix's cafeteria counter. On the Bellerophon, it's a galley bar with an odd wall dressing covering up Neelix's backroom kitchen. Do you smell what the rock is Never mind. That worked better in my head. What a crappy way to end the video. So that's the video. Big thanks to Memory Alpha for being effectively flawless. Trek Core, Forgotten Trek, X Astris Science, this site, and to all these awesome people for helping me cover a few extra days of daycare costs for my toddler so I could get this video done. If you liked this video, you can thank these folks for allowing it to be made. And if you hated the video, you can blame these people for allowing it to be made. If you're new around here, and one of the 12 people still actually watching by this point in the video, there's more Star Trek ship videos on this channel. Feel free to stay in the loop. Thanks so much for watching and, well, dismissed.
Dismissed. That's a Starfleet expression for get out.